Our whole commitment to the leather community was to keep the Eagle open, invest in it where we had to. It takes a lot of investment to keep business in this city continuing, especially being a gay leather bar.
It was a real risk opening that bar because you didn't know whether you were going to have enough people to support it. Turned out it had more than enough people to support it.
There have been rumors of the Eagle closing for almost as long as I've worked for the Eagle. The costs have gone skyrocketed since I took over. I wasn't in it to get rich, even if there were diminishing returns, so to speak. Being downtown in the heart of Washington, D.C., I want to fly my flags proudly. I want to let people know I'm not giving in. I'm not giving up. The community needed an Eagle. I'm Bill Capello, owner of the Eagle. Don Bruce was the man, obviously, that hired me. The very first owner. He opened the DC Eagle in 1971. Don was a leather biker man. He loved portraying the leather biker image. He was a member of the Spartan Motorcycle Club, founding member of the Spartan Motorcycle Club. It's one of the only clubs in the area where, at that time, you had to have a motorcycle to be a member of the club. The biker guys, the leather gay clubs, really were expanding, growing, but the place that they were at was called the Hideaway. Right across from the FBI building is where Louis was. It had the Rogue, the drag bar upstairs, and Louis, the restaurant, and then the Hideaway below. Many times I walked this strip. There were the Lone Star and Carol's, like I said, Gaiety Theater, bookstores. That was the old Hideaway in the basement there. And I imagine back then they used to have a lot of motorcycles parked in front of their place before the Eagle opened.
The Hideaway was just, excuse my expression, a gay bar. Yeah. Wasn't much to it, really. You never knew what was going to be in there, whether they got men's clothes, women's clothes, or otherwise. So. And they had another place upstairs, which was a restaurant in the front, upstairs. And then the Hideaway was downstairs, and then Louis was in the back. The crowd used to go to Louis. We sort of took that over, and we all got to know each other in the bar. Yeah, we were just acquaintances, and then we all joined the club. The club was formed at Louis.
You didn't have Facebook or Craigslist or anything like that. You went to the bars to socialize.
This was at Louis' Halloween party. That's me with no head. There's Roy Jones. That's Don Bruce. We all attended bar there, especially on club night. I'm not a bartender, believe me. The owners were always very good. We went there for a long time.
My name is Bill Edmond. I don't know how I found out about Louis' Lounge, but I did. I live in Baltimore. And it might be the fact that this group used to come to Baltimore on one day of the weekend because Louis closed at midnight and the bar in Baltimore was open till 2 in the morning. And I think it may be Saturday night, perhaps Sunday night, I'm not sure. I think it was Saturday. Louis would close early, so they'd come over to Baltimore on Saturday. And they got talking about it, and I noticed that, there was a club of some kind that they belonged to. So you had to have a motorcycle to be a member. So what did I do? I go out and buy a motorcycle to become a member. So I used to drive down there not being a member and park outside. But that's how I became familiar with them, was when they come to Baltimore. I met them over there. I felt kind of uneasy because right across the street, catty-cornered across the street, was the FBI building. Like a lot of people, I had a fear of being discovered by the company I worked for in Baltimore, which was Westinghouse. And I was curious, what might happen if somebody finds out about this. So I would first going to Louis, I was dressed in civilian clothes.
You kept it to yourself. It would be, you know, you let do any, it just, I don't know. Let me put it to you this way, it was a lonely existence because you had to really be careful who you said what to.
And I had a security clearance, a secret security clearance, working for Westinghouse. And I was fearful of being discovered because that was anti-gay era in our lifetime. And as a result, I just didn't tell people what I did and where I worked and this type of thing. They didn't know. And I didn't feel until I got to know the people that, you know, I could let this out. And then come to find out, a guy that worked for the same company was also a member of the Spartans. And he's the one that asked me if I would like to become a member.
The Spartans had a rule, so many miles. You had to be living in so many miles. And the people from Baltimore came and they raised the miles because we had members. We had members in Baltimore.
They welcomed you and made you feel important. That they would talk with you and discuss this, that, and the other. The Spartans decided that they were going to have a run, an event out of town, and they called it Marathon.
The first marathon was in 1969, Jim Bourne's place.
And he lived over in the Eastern Shore, and he had this old house with a barn and a silo.
In fact, Don Bruce was the marathon chairman.
People from all up and down the East Coast, you have to remember at that time there were only a couple clubs, but people from the Empire City that had just formed and other local people in the area all showed up, and we had sort of like a long weekend camping out, roughing it, getting to know people, and building relationships between the clubs.
Don was like a man enough with all that leathers he had on, the hat, and smoking, drinking, and people just came up and talked to him.
And he was giving out awards for longest traveled and this and the other. One of the trophies, I forget which one it was. We had him parachuted in. Well, it's like at this marathon thing, people would say that we were ruffians. They wouldn't come by our part of the, we camped out tents. That's 300-400 people, one little house, so you had to, and barn or whatever. And they would say that we were ruffians. Well, we weren't ruffians. We just dressed that way and rode motorcycles and that sort of thing.
And then you'd walk down the street, the cobblestone or gravel road, to the river. There's a river down there. It was swimming in there. Well, people would think that you were rough and tough, and a lot of them were not. But they put up a good show, good front. But it's an interesting lifestyle. You know, you enjoy things. Some people are into S&M. It fit them very well. And others just like to ride with motorcyclists and wear leather and have the eyeballs on you.
Very closeted at that point in time. And so for a group of men to come together and to be as visible as what we were doing was something new. Nobody in the area had ever done that, not in those terms and not in those means. So part of what was going on at that point in time is that we were tired of the closet, we were coming out of the closet, at least in our social lives, and the motorcycles were one of those vehicles.
Me, Don Bruce, Roy Jones. We were all a group because we were all Spartans. I lived with Roy Jones at one time, and they lived next door, and Don Bruce lived with me. We were all getting it started, you know. I got out of the Navy in 1954, 1 month before my 21st birthday. Well, let me put it to you this way. I was a young, fairly attractive guy, young man. Had nothing to really hold on to. I worked off and on jobs. This was taken when I had my first motorcycle. They're christening my motorcycle. That's Mei Ling, Don Bruce and me. I have a reputation. If you give me a hard time, I'm going to tell you, verbally, I'm going to tell you apart. And they gave me a nickname. I was derogatory. When you get to the point where you can do something like buy leather clothes, great balls of fire. That's me. Don Bruce, Roy Jones.
I can recall is that, you know, they were hanging around down there at Louis' bar in the back when they discussed it. That's where Don Bruce got the idea that he wanted to go ahead and open a bar, that it would be his bar, and that would be the DC Eagle.
Roy Jones was a bartender at Louis' London, and he worked there. And then when the idea of opening the Eagle came up, Roy Jones got involved with Don Bruce in doing preparatory work. And then when Louis found out that he was working with Don Bruce, Louis fired him, and then he had a job up at the Eagle.
And I think Don and Roy had a good idea when they did this. And I think they made it work along with some help from people. Roy was very friendly, and Don was too.
Don, of course, was the stimulus that got it going, and the financial backing that made it work.
I knew it'd be part of it because, you know, my connection with them. And it was all done basically because of this club. You weren't really happy with who you were around when you went to the regular bars. I mean, it was one of those things you saw a man come in a woman's dress with the hair up and all that good stuff. It just it wasn't my type of life. It never has been. To this day, it's still not. The original was not, I don't think, open to make money. I think it was open because we wanted a place to go. And Don Bruce wanted a place to go.
He opened the DC Eagle in 1971.
When the Eagle first opened, I worked there for nothing. But let me put it to you this way. That opened, and anybody that could help them with it, do them well enough, would help. Believe me. Because it was someplace they wanted to go.
When he first opened the Eagle, it wasn't, you know, a huge complex. It was a good-sized bar. You know, it had back room bar, and had a kitchen. They just served it on the first floor. Don put his apartment, which was very handy, was above the original Eagle. So he lived there. He lived there day and night, and that was his place. So he knew everything that was going on at the Eagle all the time. And it was just about opening the bar and getting just established. They wanted a place that was 100%, 24 hours, 7 days a week was a leather bar. And that's what they wanted, and that's what Don Bruce wanted also. So he got together with a bunch of guys, and they opened the original DC Eagle. He was good friends with Jack Medica, who was the owner of the New York Eagle at the time. And so he We even had their banner hanging up in the bar for a while. Their banner said Eagle's Nest.
And it's named after that, and they called them to ask them if they would mind if we named it the Eagle, and they said no.
He realized there was a need for the Eagle, for there to be a center. This was like a community center. That's how we always approached business here at the Eagle. You know, we wanted it to be a communal center for the men.
They made it just, you know, you enjoyed it. This is the kind when you walk in, hey, Robbie, how are you? One of those things, and this is what happens when you get to know a lot of people. Everybody seemed to get together easily in that crew when they opened that bar. And another thing, not like the rest of the bars in that city, which you had a number of them, same people came all the time. They rarely went to the other bars. Once in a while you'd miss a few, but most of repeats were quite often. If I hadn't known Don Bruce or Roy Jones and I went in that bar for the first time, I'd go back. I'd go back if I hadn't known any of them. The first year that the Eagle was open, they gave out Christmas gifts. You know what it was? A bottle of booze. Bourbon, I'm sure it was. And I've got the bottle out there. It's got an eagle on it.
When the Eagle began, first opened, it was very small. But as time went by, then it grew.
That's why they opened the one inside, because the original patrons, it got to the point where things didn't act the same as it were. People didn't act the same as we did with us.
The law said you had to serve a certain amount of food in the bar also. So they set up this one area as a restaurant, and then the bar was on another room. And then in the evening, around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, they would close down the restaurant and put the tables in a big stack and chairs in a stack, and that was another bar then. They had 2 rooms then.
The front door was over here. Over here, the other building, they took that building and opened the door between them. And they had a bar over there that you weren't allowed to go in there if you were on drag or Nelly or anything else. And I was a doorman there. And I had to work the door in full leather. In fact, I had a pair of 501 Levi's leather I had made at Roy's shop.
The early years, we had this thing about 501 Levi's.
Homophobia ran rampant at Levi Strauss for quite a while. If they knew it was a gay business, they wouldn't allow you to sell their product.
And so we had the black box salary, which we bought our Levi's under, and then they immediately got transferred into the accounting system for the leather rack. So the leather rack was creation out of those entities owned by the Bruces, and in the early days by one of the Spartans, Roy Jones.
Roy Jones and Don Bruce, I would think they were more like business partners in a way that Don Bruce had a lover that was called Billy Enright. And then I think Roy Jones had this Bob Walker, but they were like business and keeping the Eagle going plus the leather rack.
Black Fox sadly failed, I think, from a financial standpoint. And they had a Levi account. And Don Bruce didn't have a Levi account in his store. So he bought their account from Black Fox Saddlery.
I really didn't get too involved with what was going on between he and Don. And whether they forced him out or bought him out, I don't know. I really don't. And Roy never discussed it with me, and I never asked. It's just one of those things you didn't get into.
Original Eagle, Don Bruce opened it with some friends. He had a lot of support to do it. As his partner at the time, I believe his name was Billy Enright, helped him. That was Don Bruce's baby. He really, was proud of his leather rack and had merchandise, everything you could think of, belt buckles and toys and lube and clothes, leather jackets, chaps, harnesses, everything a proud leather man would want or want to get for somebody. And that's keep you supplied, especially if you came from out of town and didn't have all your gear with you. You made a trip to the leather rack to be able to set you up for the weekend or for however long you're going to be here.
Then he became very popular, and not only in the gay community in D.C., but in California and New York.
And this has sort of transcended into some other things that we also, along with our Centaur brothers, helped create was the AMCC, or the Motorcycle Coordinating Council. And Dan's a past president of it. It's Atlantic or?
Atlantic Coordinating.
Yeah, Atlantic Motorcycle Coordinating Council. It's incorporated here in Washington. It meets all up and down the northeastern part of the country. It serves as a sounding board, as a coordinating council for all of the clubs, so that we got to where we were all doing events, and to keep from stepping on each other's toes, EMCC came into existence to create a calendar and sanction events so that we respected each other's investment and time and energy to put on one of these events.
Somewhere along the line in that 1976 bicentennial that they had in Atlantic City by the AMCC, that means all the clubs. In Atlantic City, that's where something was going on strange between Don Bruce and Billy Enright, because they were lovers. And I don't know what became of it, but they had quite a fight. I didn't see the whole thing, but I heard what was going on down there. And it seemed like that's where they may have broke up. In a fight, Billy Enright was almost like he was crying in tears, trying to beg to get Don to come back to him. Don, I guess, decided that he didn't want any more. And there was a time where he met somebody else that was from another club, Sir Dick Hughes down there at the Atlantic City. At the same time at that run down there, and then that's where Don spent time with Dick Hughes, while Billy Enright was there, was upset and mad because they had to fight, and Don decided to go with Dick Hughes. So that was the end of the story of their fight in Atlantic City. So the Billy Enright's relationship with Don was gone. Now Don had the new lover, Dick Hughes. He was a member of the Bucks MC at that time, and then when they became lovers, Dick decided to move to Washington to be with Don.
When I first went to the Eagle, and before I started working for it, I really wasn't even in the mindset about what the leather community was. Bikers, to me, it was as the biker bar, it's the leather biker bar, and these guys are cool. One weekend, we went to the DC Eagle, and I was waiting on a White House clearance, so we were very careful not to disclose to anybody what we were doing or where we went. So this is 1977, probably, and went to the Eagle, and all these motorcycles just lined up at the front of the bar, and all these guys walking across the street in their boots and leather and their chaps, and it was just very, very engrossing for me. And so I went to go into the bar, and I was wearing, I wasn't wearing boots. They were more like tennis shoes, and they weren't going to let me in because it's the DC Eagle, and back then, in the 70s, you're a biker, and you got to, on the weekends especially, you better be in leather or, got your boots on. And so they did let me in because I had a military ID, but I had to stay in the front bar, and I wasn't allowed to mosey around. for the first time I went there, but after that I realized I'm wearing boots. Because I didn't venture too often to any gay establishment while I was in the Army. I was, you know, everybody who was gay back then and still in the military, you really had to walk on eggshells. When I first went in the Army, I was chosen for the executive flight detachment, and that's President's helicopters back then. This is when Jerry Ford was president, still president. What convinced me to get out of the military was a fellow MP from Fort Belvoir, where I had been previous to Indian Head, Maryland. They found out he was gay and lost everything. You know, he was a sergeant, lost everything, and was kicked out, you know, dishonorable discharge, or general discharge, I believe they called it back then. And, you know, you lose your benefits and all your rights as a veteran. I was really concerned because I felt he knew I was gay. And the CID, Army intelligence people, they were known for getting that information out of guys from previous encounters, so that after I found out he had been caught or found out, I was scared to death he was going to drop my name, that I was homosexual also. So when it was time for me to re-up, I decided not to, and I got out because I just couldn't handle doing that. I got out June 1978, and in November of that year, I decided to go back to Colorado, and my whole point there was after getting out of the military, I was tired of living the lie. I'm just not going to do this for the rest of my life. So I thought I'd spend some time with my family, get them comfortable with me again. I didn't want to just come home and say, I'm gay. First, it was important my brothers knew, and then I told my parents, and that didn't go over too well. That was pretty much a lead balloon, which I was hoping would have been different, but back then, especially in small, rural Colorado mountain towns, they don't come into contact with openly gay, homosexual people very often, and it was quite a shocker to my parents, and they couldn't handle it. So they didn't want me hanging around with my brothers, you know, which was understandable back then. They knew they were onto something really great. I really believe that. They had a lot of confidence back then, and during that whole period of time, from 71 to 81, 10 years at the original spot, or close to 10 years, 1980, it just grew.
The non-leather Levi, non-biker type people are coming in there, and they're in greater numbers. And here again, the bar is in business to make money. And if you don't go and they don't go, then they're not making money. So they open it up, and there's more and more of the non-leather type.
See, the Eagle also created, because disco was in those early years of the 80s and the 70s, the Eagle in Exile.
I'm Tom Bauer. I'd sort of float around the Eagle anywhere the space was right, the crowd was right, and you picked a place and there you were. The Exile had dancing, and I like to dance, so pretty much anybody looks good in leather, and so it shielded you at one level, and it made yourself very much yourself at that time.
We had one of our anniversaries in there, and had a motorcycle up on a stand of some kind.
It was just a big boys club. I don't ever recall seeing anybody having sex at the Eagle. People got really friendly. They would interrupt whatever was going on. The parking lot was a whole other situation, but within the establishment, they were very prim, we'll say. If anything, there was less sexual pressure because I guess it was obvious the way people were dressed that they had a purpose. The Eagle, you had to want to go there. Nobody accidentally shows up at the Eagle. Your boss is not going to just, oh, I just stopped in here for a drink. Well, if he did, he's out too.
Yeah, Don Bruce had an accident on his motorcycle and broke his jaw and his mouth wired shut.
And that's why they didn't want him to ride anymore because they were afraid he might get killed on the next motorcycle ride or whatever. So he backed out, and then that was the last I know of seeing Dom from 1976 on. From there, Dom was more in the bar tending business than he was with the Spartans. It was in the Eagle that we gave Don Bruce a great big trophy for his appreciation and service with the BC Eagle and the community. And that was a time where Dick Hughes was there at that ceremony when the Spartans presented that trophy. And that's when Don Bruce decided to bring Dick Hughes up with that trophy as it's his love with him.
Him and Don were lovers, and it was a labor of love. It was about throwing parties and having a good time. One time, Dick was an engineer, and one of his friends decided to make like a bathtub full of poppers. So Dick got a lot of it and put it in the air conditioning unit. So when the strobe lights came on, all these people were just like getting all this poppers, and people were passing out and all kinds of stuff going on the dance floor. So it was pretty wild back then.
Oh, I just feel honored and appreciate what people like Don Bruce did to bring this out to the public, and we would be the recipients of that effort of his. We had a place to meet, and new people would come in, you would meet new people, and things of that type were beneficial to the gay community, especially the bikers, because that was the biker bar.
We actually had a commitment to the community to carry on. That's what the Eagle was built on, was the camaraderie of the leather clubs getting together to raise funds. It gave us more of a purpose of being here. We weren't just here because we're a bar.
My name is Tom Yates. I'm Executive Director of Brother Help Thyself.
Brother Help Thyself has been around for 30 some odd years.
Initially, I think a lot of the gay bars were mafia-owned, and so there was no stake in the community. The owners of the bars were just out to make money and to make it off gay people. I think a lot of that changed. A lot of the gay bars then became gay-owned, and I think the gay owners of those bars had a real ownership in the community, began to do things that were more for the community, more fundraising for the community.
Everybody just said, okay, we've got to start taking care of ourselves. We've got to start doing things. Brother Help Thyself came out of that.
Basically, what the Eagle did was coordinate events and charity events with Brother Help Thyself, which is a group of the leather clubs that get together on a regular basis to organize and talk about upcoming events, what events they want to support.
The Whitman Walker Clinic got started through the Eagle as a gay men's VD clinic.
There were gay organizations that actually needed money. Specifically, the Gay Men's VD Clinic, which later became Whitman Walker Clinic, was pretty close to folding up. They were having money problems.
You know, they were one of the early places that provided condoms for everybody to take for free. So I think the community realized again, okay, you know, we are off on our own, so we're not going to cringe and hide. We're going to do what we can do.
There were a couple leather clubs that tried to do some fundraising. Well, actually, they were successful at the fundraising. They weren't successful in giving the money. They tried to give money to a couple mainstream charities who gave the money back. They weren't interested in getting money that was so clearly labeled as gay, so clearly identified with the leather community.
Some of them felt that they didn't really want to come to the Eagle to collect their contribution. It was okay us raising money at the Eagle for them, but for them to really, they felt uncomfortable coming to the Eagle to pick up their contributions or, you know, what was being divvied out at the end of the year.
Money we've raised, mostly they did $1 at a time. They raised money selling beer here at the Eagle. They had basket auctions, auction off their clothes. They were very creative in the ways they raised money. And again, a lot of that was sort of $1 at a time.
Stand up and be counted. Every woman and a man. There's justice in the world. Let's have a show of hands.
My association with Don Bruce was sort of political convention. He was an alternate delegate with me, but I did go occasionally to the Eagle, and we did go to Denver a lot. So a lot of people were part of that community, and I recognized he was an influential person. I was not a representative of the average gay man. I had a very positive attitude about being gay. And when you have that attitude, it has an impact on people's thinking, you know, because I wasn't defensive about it, you know. There was a total prohibition of gay men and lesbians working in the federal government, including the district government, even in the post office. All kinds of people were fired, you know, from their jobs. Because you could be charged, you know, you've been charged with notorious, disgraceful, immoral conduct. But they never provided any justification where the information came from or anything. When people lost their jobs, they believed there was internalized homophobia, and so they thought that they were responsible for losing their jobs, and that's why they never challenged anything. When you start believing yourself, in the integrity of yourself and your lifestyle, that's when you begin to challenge, become open. That's what happened. The essence of gay liberation was when gay men and lesbians began to believe in themselves, believe in the integrity of themselves. They were an integral part of society. Just like in my family, you know, it was open so that people became aware, and they made themselves aware to others, you know, and that was the profound. That's what gay liberation was all about. A changing consciousness about who you were and about being honest. The Gertrude Stein Democratic Club was founded in my living room. Our big goal was to get a plank in the platform of the Democratic Party supporting gay rights. And then we wanted to make an impact at the convention against the party establishment. And we did that because of the 1976 Democratic Convention that was coming up. And I was on a slate, didn't win, but it was the beginnings, you know. Barry's a political opportunist, you know, very was. And so he became very supportive, you know.
He was a great friend of the community at a time we needed friends.
1978, so there were three candidates. Walter Washington, who was the mayor, who was originally appointed against Sterling Tucker, who was chairman of the city council, and Marion Barry. Barry was expected to run third.
The Saturday before the election, the Washington Post ran a story. The caption was, "Gays hope to cast deciding votes for Barry." On election night, he was leading by 500 votes. He eventually wound up winning by 1,500. In 20 precincts, there were like 140 of them in the city. Barry got, where there were a concentration of gay men and lesbians, he got from 50 to 65% of the vote. In all the other precincts in the city, he ran for. We really promoted him in a big way. We got all these people. We put together a flyer with everybody's name on it. Don Bruce's name on the eagle next to Don Culver and Bill Bedford, all kinds of people. You know, Mary Berry came to the Eagle the Saturday night with Effie. She was very elegant. She gave him class, which he needed. After he was elected, became mayor in January 1979, he appointed more openly gay men and women to jobs and boards and commissions than all other elected officials combined throughout the entire United States. But in 1980, we were very successful. We had 13% of the DC delegation at the time, and I was the Slate campaign manager I recruited Don Bruce. And over the course, especially at the Democratic Convention, he had a lot of good common sense, and so he was moderate and had good judgment, you know. And obviously he was very successful during what he was doing. We recognized he was a leader in the community. And so when I was putting together this coalition for Mary Berry, when he was first running for the Democratic nomination on second Tuesday in September of 1978, he's one of the people I approached. That's me. I was on Ward 2 representative, Democratic State Committee. Melvin Boozer, who was president of Gay Activists Alliance, African American, and we placed his name in nomination for Vice President of the United States before the Democratic Convention. It was the most successful thing I think I've ever been involved with in my entire life. We accomplished every goal we set out to do. The progress that we made as a community was simply beyond our ability to even conceive of in the early 1960s.
I came back to DC. My original thought was I was just going to spend a couple of weeks here, and then I was going to go up to New Jersey because I had an aunt and uncle who worked for the phone company. And I thought I'd get a job with the phone company. But then I happened by the New Eagle because in that period of time from me leaving and going to Colorado and coming back, the Eagle actually moved during that period of time. So I went to try to go by the Eagle at the old original location. I was like, no, it closed. And then I went to another bar and they told me, no, it moved, and they told me where the New Eagle was. So in 1980, I moved here to 908 7th Street. So it was exactly 2 blocks over. And they did that to put the original convention center in over on 9th Street, which isn't there any longer. But Don Bruce put a lot of effort into making the Eagle what it was, and it stood out. It was a pretty great complex. It had a huge, like 25-foot wide mural of the Eagle up on the 3rd floor balcony, so you could see it from the street everywhere. And for blocks around at that time. Like I said, when these tall buildings weren't around, you could see the Eagle from, blocks away. Tree that was right outside the dining room windows from the 2nd floor of the old Eagle. Almost every day, you'd see dozens and dozens of motorcycles parked up and down here. None of these buildings were here. It was free parking. It was great. It had the 3 buildings of the Eagle here. Dining room used to open at 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning every day. And so we had a really great brunch on the weekends, really comparable pricing. And in the afternoon, you had business people from up and down the street, straight or gay, that would be having lunch there. At one time, they had near 100 employees between the bar downstairs, which was actually 4 different bars, and then the restaurant and the kitchen on the 2nd floor, and then you had the leather rack on the 3rd floor. That day I went over to the Eagle, started talking to a couple guys at the bar and the bartender, and said, well, cool, could I fill in an application? And so talked to a manager at the time, which was Gordon DeHond, and then to Don Bruce, and the only real openings they had were in the restaurant. So I started in the restaurant with Don Bruce offering me the job because he was planning to open another section of the Eagle called the Exit Bar, which was going to be all country western. You had to wear boots to get in. And he said, well, I won't have a bartending spot until late October, but they're looking for help in the restaurant. Barbara, his sister-in-law. So I had a meeting with Barbara Bruce. It was a really wonderful lady. She reminded me, actually, of my mom running a restaurant and the details that you have to pay attention to for running a restaurant, especially the Eagle restaurant, which was quite an establishment. And great kitchen, great staff. I learned a great deal from some of the veteran waiters there, and did a great job for Barbara, but I never let anybody know that Don Bruce had offered me the bartendership downstairs, because just keep it quiet, because some other guys actually, and probably properly so, were a little miffed at me getting the bartender shift when they'd been there waiting for theirs. But deal was, if I didn't let anybody know, when the bar opened, he'd give me a chance to tend bar. And so I did, and it worked out. But Barbara was kind of upset because she didn't even know that I had made that arrangement, Don had made that arrangement with me. So that was understandable. I was really looking forward to being a bartender downstairs. So I worked in the restaurant for Barbara Bruce until October of 1981. I started in August 1981, October, so only a few months later, I started helping them put this other bar together. Excuse me. And I started tending bar downstairs. I believe it was Halloween weekend of 1981. And that's where I started tending bar. My bartender partners were George Wanless and Jim Taylor. George isn't with us any longer, but Jim Taylor, he taught me everything about Tenenbaugh at the DC Eagle, and we became really good friends, partners. Don Bruce introduced me to a lot of the leathermen in the community that were involved, even other bar owners from around the country. And he thought it was important for me to get a big taste of the leather community in New York City. He was a big New York fan. He loved the New York Eagle. About 1982 or 83, we took a road trip in his sleek white Lincoln Continental, and I got to drive. And I felt so bad being in this car with two men from the Leather Rack, Don Bruce and myself from the Eagle. We're all in leather, driving up to New York City in this white leather interior, white, sleek Lincoln Continental. And he took me to around New York, showed me the leather scene and the different underground leather clubs. He never came on to me. He just wanted to show me around, show me the place. We met up a couple hours earlier. He asked me if I had a good time. I said, yeah, I did. He said, and that's when he said, all right, let's go have a couple of beers and sit down and talk. And then we sat and chewed the shit for like 2-3 hours until dawn that day, the next day. And shortly after that, after we got back to Washington, he said, you're okay, kid, and you're part of the family now. You don't have to worry about anything. Being part of the Eagle family is what he was talking about. And ever since then, my whole life has been dedicated to keeping the Eagle going, to keep it the way they wanted things run. That's the way I would do it. I said, even if I didn't agree with something, they want something done this way, it's Don's place, or Dick McHugh told me to do something a certain way, that's how it got done. At that time, Dick McHugh was also my boss too, because he was the general manager of the DC Eagle back then, being Don's partner, life partner. So I was very familiar with Dick and his mannerisms. He was always the stern, more disciplined man in the room, always. Dick was the man that fixed everything. He fixed the ice machines, he fixed the air conditioners. He's the one that put in the soda systems, bottle bin containers. When something needed to be done mechanically, they went to Dick McHugh about it. That's where his mind was. But after they got to know me, also, they made me feel, like family. And Don even told me, and when he told me that too, that one night, it was like the best night of my life when he said, "You're family now, kid. You don't have to worry about anything."
It had been an awful lot of fun, the late 70s, early 80s. It was sort of like being a kid in a candy store.
There was kind of this openness in the 70s and the, well into the late 70s where, sex was free. There was sex everywhere. It was a sexual revolution, if you will. And all of the bars had this notorious reputation for these back rooms and places where people would gather and have sex.
Leather is not about abuse. It's about the art of manhood. It really is. You relate to another man in leather in a totally different fashion.
Yeah, we have a lot of customers. Some of them are into leather, some of them are into gear, some of them are into S&M, but everybody can be themselves and really have a good time, and they know they're not going to get hurt. Nobody's going to hurt them. We look out for our customers when they come in.
Meeting somebody here is a lot different than meeting them on the internet. There's a lot they cannot hide. You can read them a lot quicker.
9 out of 10 chances if they're into leather, they're not that vanilla in sex.
Like I said, there's no more harm in having leather sex, and having regular sex, having vanilla sex, or whatever you want to call it. Like, you don't have to be in... you have people that are going to abuse you in a sexual way. It doesn't have to be... It's not because he's a leather man. It's just because he's an asshole.
When they walk in here, they're acknowledging they're gay. They're acknowledging who and what they are and what they're looking for.
It's a leather bar, and we're trying to meet people into leather, and we're trying to potentially meet life partners who are into the same thing we are, and sex. I don't think they're into sex at an Elks Lodge quite as much as we are here at the DC Eagle.
One night, I had a guy, a customer come up and start spitting on me, and he thought I was getting into it. It's like, motherfucker, you do that one more time, I'm gonna jack slap you. It was Christmas Eve, and it's like, so I gave him some slack. But because I did, he started going a little bit farther, and then finally it's like, I put my foot down, and he goes, oh, okay.
The gay community, in terms of what walks of life have come through the Eagle, I think pretty much we run the gamut. We really are a true cross-section of society as a whole. It's amazing where you could have shoeshine boys and doctors who are on the same level because of their shared interest and their shared fetish. And I do find that amazing.
It seemed to be almost without consequence. You know, nobody worried about getting pregnant. If you caught an STD, you know, you went to the clinic.
In the early 80s, like 80 and 81, we heard about it. There's this disease in San Francisco.
At that point, nobody knew anything. There seemed to be certain populations, specifically gay men, HIV, or intravenous drug users.
We were being told this and that. Poppers was being blamed for it. It was the gay cancer.
Scientists at the National Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta today released the results of a study which shows that the lifestyle of some male homosexuals has triggered an epidemic of a rare form of cancer. Robert Bazell now in Atlanta.
Bobby Campbell of San Francisco and Billy Walker of New York both suffer from a mysterious, newly discovered disease which affects mostly homosexual men, but has also been found in heterosexual men and women. The condition severely weakens the body's ability to fight disease. Many victims get a rare form of cancer called Kaposi sarcoma. Others get an infection known as pneumocystis pneumonia.
By 82, 83, 84 that was when the glut of it started hitting. You know, HTLV3, acquired immune deficiency syndrome, going on in California. And so we really didn't know a whole lot of people that were infected yet. But once it started going, it was like a snowball. It just kept on, more and more and more people were getting sick all the time. There was a lot of bigotry and hate towards anybody that you found out, or, you know, people would want to shun you, or, you know, didn't want you around. They didn't want to use the same glass that you might have used. You know, it was really important to us to make people that feel somebody who wanted to go have his last drink or last hurrah, they knew they could come to the bar. It was important for us to make sure they felt they had a place they could go and be supported and have support and be able to talk about whatever. If they wanted to talk about it or talk about something else, even, or just take it off their mind, get it off their mind for a little while.
Particularly for me, as I was coming out, you know, I'm jumping into my sexual freedom and, oh, wow, I can die.
It took 6 weeks for someone to find out whether or not you were HIV positive. And that was a long 6 weeks. It was very scary, actually, because there were people that didn't want to know their HIV status because they just assumed they were positive.
If they weren't aware of any help, we would point them in the right directions to go to the clinic or a hospice, or who to get in touch with that could point them in the right directions to get their medication, to get checked up, and just maybe even just to get a place to live.
There were periods of time where you had a funeral you could go to pretty much every weekend because your friends were passing away quickly. It was a bad period of time.
It was a change in my attitude because probably through the 80s and early 90s, everybody seemed to be waiting to die, waiting for when it was going to be your turn, when your nickel was going to come up, because so many of your friends and people that were involved with even staff, especially from the old Eagle, were just dying.
And I had a new BMW motorcycle. And he said, could I have a ride with you back home? He lived on 6th Street over in D.C. I said, sure. So he had this pad that lets you find inside of a jacket, you know, it's fleece type pad. And he sat behind me, and I gave him a ride back to his apartment. But I was surprised at how thin he was. He'd lost a lot of weight, and he really enjoyed the ride back to his apartment.
I would have to think it was the time when the HIV and AIDS came out that really shocked the community, because of all the people I knew around and that always patronized the bars and everything. They're gone. A lot of them are gone. And that's why I think maybe the Eagle was struggling to keep afloat in the business, but the newer generation guys will still come in, but us older folks, we just fucked out.
There was not a lot of treatment. So there were some people that felt I'm just going to grab as much life as I possibly can, as quickly as I can, because I don't know how much more time I've got.
More than a couple times did I have to leave the room because I didn't want to cry in front of somebody because I'd see them and I'd say, oh my God, I didn't know he was that sick. You know, you'd see a man one day and a couple months later, you'd see him and he'd be all skin and bones or in a wheelchair. Or have Kaposi sarcoma all over his skin. And so many times you'd see a friend that you hadn't seen in a few months and say, oh man, I didn't know. Yeah, and they tried to keep it under wraps as long as possible because basically people weren't looking for sympathy or help. You know, they were just trying to live their life out until the end.
By 1986, it was just a major epidemic. At first, it spread an enormous amount of fear and just concern, and, it's hard to describe it, you know. There's a wave of fear. Ultimately, what happened was that AIDS brought about the transformation of gay liberation, because everybody, most Americans, wound up knowing somebody who had AIDS. Somebody in their family or their neighbors or somebody. Just transformed attitudes.
My mom called me in 1990, I'd say about 2 weeks before Mother's Day. Ryan White had just died.
The little boy with the big medical problems didn't for 1 minute of his life let AIDS get in the way of making a difference. He was told he couldn't go to school in his hometown of Kokomo, so he went to court instead, and he won. And through his battle, a battle that seemed always to be wrapped in a smile and tolerance for people who had none, Ryan White taught a nation not to be afraid, at a time when fear could have crippled him.
My family and I held no hatred for those people because we realized they were victims of their own ignorance.
And I had just had a close friend die of AIDS. And in the phone conversation, she could tell I was upset. She asked, what's going on? And I said, I lost a friend to AIDS. And this woman, who I dearly love, says, so you know people like that? And it's like, what do you mean, people like that? Gay people. And it really shocked me that she would say something like this, because like I said, I was raised in a very liberal denomination Christian church where it was very accepting. But she told me, you know people like that. And I proceeded to tell her that, AIDS is not a gay disease. It affects everybody. And I proceeded to tell her, you know, what do you mean gay disease? Well, they get what they deserve. And I said, who are you? You're not the person that raised me, you know? And I said, you know gay people. I lost over 83 friends, close friends to AIDS. And to have my mom tell me that they deserved what they got, just. So, knowing my mom and knowing how emotional person, that's where I get that from, I went home to Terre Haute and talked to our minister and said, I need some advice. I told him I was gay. Both my sisters already knew, and an older cousin knew. And he says, well, your mom's already come to talk to me about it. And he framed it to her, do you love your son? She says, of course. He's my son. He said, so what does it matter? So that's when I decided I needed to tell my parents. And I finally came out to my mom and dad. My dad, I thought, would have a bigger problem with it being a military man. He's the one that had less of a problem. He told me before he passed away that, you know, there were men that he knew that were gay in the military, but it just wasn't spoken about. It's been interesting. It's been an education for my family.
We went through the initial wave of fear, all these people dying, you know, getting sick. The newspapers, the Washington Bay was just filled with it. Eventually, you know, the ACT came into. Eventually, we got control of the epidemic. And then the long-term impact of it was that it had a profound impact on people's attitude, on everybody's attitude.
You would pick up the blade and there'd be 2, 3, sometimes even more, 4 pages of obituaries. And a lot of them were friends of ours, leather community people. And that went on for years. So, you know, every time you got a little sick, if you had pneumonia, you thought it was your time. If you got any herpes, or, I mean, not herpes, shingles, you come down with shingles, you say, oh, what else is gonna follow this, you know? So my persona actually changed from waiting for my turn, so to speak, because you talk about it with your friends, especially people, lovers who survived their lovers who passed. When you talk to them, you know, it was like, we knew it was going to happen. My time will be coming pretty soon. You know, I told him not to go to the bathhouses, you know, and stuff. But it's like, you couldn't blame it on any one particular reason why anybody died. It was just, that was how it was, and you accepted it. And so Dick and I both saw a lot of friends, especially the old timers, the vintage Leathermen. They were the ones that were most exposed, you know, in the early 80s and late 70s to when the disease was spreading before people really knew how to protect themselves from it. A couple of bars closed right off back in 87, 88. Because of owners dying, getting sick and dying. I think the gay bars, all gay bars as a whole, I believe, by 1987 were feeling the effects of AIDS on the community. Business was down a little bit, staff were getting sick and dying, and customers were getting sick and dying. 94, there was we had the AIDS quilt. That kind of event helped people maybe get over the scare of AIDS a little bit and started venturing back out to the bars maybe. And it seemed like it was a little pickup. You know, it was like a giant gay pride rally. It just maybe enticed people to realize they can go out. They don't have to be afraid to be out and acknowledge that they're gay or they're HIV or they're positive or their lover's positive or their lover died of AIDS.
You know, the AIDS, as awful as it was useful for the helping the community come out. Is all of a sudden these people who otherwise would have stayed in the closet, you know, couldn't, and so people realized, oh, it's my son, it's my nephew, it's my grandparents.
I think, if anything, the leather community has probably done a better job, at least on the local here at DC, talking about, you know, safe sex and making sure that we're putting that message out.
AIDS has not been solved, but it is now a sort of more of a chronic disease rather than the life-threatening disease that it was. Well, it's still life-threatening, but not the immediate life-threatening disease that it was 20 years ago.
It's a different time now because we're all living a lot longer, and I'm really, you know, that is amazing. You know, back then in the 80s, and in mid-80s especially, a lot of staff was getting sick, a lot of friends were getting ill, and they saw the writing where they figured, you know, it was time to downsize anyway, so the idea of us going into a smaller location, Don was happy about that for Dick. And it did work out for a while because, you know, we prepared, you know, to downsize. 1984, Dick McHugh found this building, and knowing that they were going to retire, Don Bruce and Eddie Bruce and Barbara, and letting the Eagle go, he wanted to get ready and prepared to take over in another location, the name. I was asked if I'd like to go over and help Dick build this bar and start working for him over here. And I had a really pretty good shift at the Eagle, and I was like, thought about it a little bit, and I said, why not? It's a gamble, it's a lot, you know, it's a gamble, it's for the gay community, it's for the leather community. We don't want the Eagle to, you know, just close. So, yeah, I'll be glad, I'd be happy to, as long as it's okay with Don and Barbara. And it's like, so Roy Jones, who was the manager at the time, was the one that came up and asked me for Dick, on Dick's behalf, whether I'd like to come over here and help work on the bar. And they were surprised that I said yes, actually, because they didn't think I'd want to give up my bartending job. But I looked at it as a gamble, and why not show, you know, some support for the community? And that was where I really started becoming involved more in doing things for the leather community. You know, here at the bar, here with Dick McHugh especially. Dick and I started bonding in 1985. Opened the bar in January 1985. Had first leather cocktails in 1986. In January 1985, rather. Leather cocktails was held up here. Like I told you at the time, this bar wasn't opened yet. So it was a large open space.
It got so full, we could feel it bounce on the rafters. It was actually moving on the floor. I'm certain the fire marshal did not want to know what was going on.
It was called Leather Cocktails. It was a Spartans Motorcycle Club would put on a big party, invite who's who in the leather community up and down the East Coast to the event. So, and at that time, we didn't even have the steel staircase in yet even. It was a single wooden staircase on the side of the building. So a lot of creaking going on, all these leathermen in their boots going up and down the stairs for leather cocktails. Dick didn't put anything on the doors, but it was known as Dick's Bar. You know, he toyed with some other different names to, you know, originally Manhattan Storage and Transfer, stuff like that, but then he just decided on Dick's Bar. Within a year or so, things were pretty slow, and, you know, with the expenses that he had, much more than he was expecting, and the business wasn't picking up when you could come down here and go to the Eagle. Dick's was kind of the very last place you would go to late at night and stuff. So within about 6-8 months of going over there, I realized I needed to supplement my income too. So during the day, I used to ride messenger service and 10 bar for Dick at night. Dick was never really a businessman. You know, he didn't have it in his mind to be a businessman. That was not in his mind when he decided to try and keep the Eagle going. The only reason why he opened the little bar downstairs in the first place was because he realized there was a need for the Eagle. So business wasn't quite like going very well. Dick was helping out with maintenance at the Eagle and whatever else, you know, job he was doing. But he was doing most of the main manpower stuff here himself and doing the design. And he's the one that put it together. This bar here, actually, I came in one afternoon. The downstairs bar was open, but we hadn't put the bar in up here yet. And originally, the bar was going to go against this wall, just directly above the bar from downstairs. Plumbing was easier to do. And then somebody mentioned to Dick, you know, with the mirrors on the wall, you put the bar in the middle of the room, you could sit twice as many people at the bar. So I came in one day, and here's Dick with a level and a straight edge on the floor with chalk drawn out where he was putting the bar in the middle of the room and where the plumbing was going to go and where the electric was going to go. The Eagle was pretty basic and rough. You know, a rough-hewn. Not rough guy, it's just rough-hewn. I mean, we didn't use maple to put tables together. You know, everything was made out of 4x4s, you know. For a lean-to bench, we didn't put padded seats, we put 4x4s to lean up against. You know, and we didn't have the DJ and the latest digital or latest, you know, sound equipment or the newest thing. So, I mean, people were told, you know, the Eagle doesn't have anything to offer. Well, what we had to offer was the camaraderie of men who like to be around other men, and it was okay if the color in one room didn't match the color in another room. Anyway, mostly it was black anyway. May 4th, 1987 was the last night at the Old Eagle, big closing party. Some people got maybe an hour's worth of sleep, maybe. In 24 hours, we moved what equipment we needed from the old place to here for the second floor using the hand-pull elevator, ice machine, coolers, cash registers from the old place, and brought them up here and started this place out, put the liquor in. We had a crew of guys that just, in the morning, moved all that stuff over to here. We did take some equipment and furniture that was like fixed that people would recognize at the Old Eagle. On the second floor, we have those big round wooden gears that people always remember them from the Eagle. The booths that are up on the second floor actually were at all three locations. And the club mug rack, where all the club mugs are, that rack came from the original Eagle, then was here at this location, then moved into the exit bar, and then we brought it over to the Eagle too. And it was done, and 12 noon, the very next day, we opened as the DC Eagle on May 5th, 1987. He always felt you could do more from behind the scenes than being out. Of course, in the back of my mind, I'd rather be out and pushing and being rebellious. But, you know, I carried on the way he wanted it carried on here. I was told by a few of my, more than one of my ex-boyfriends that I was Dick's puppet. I wasn't Dick's puppet. Dick depended on me to make, you know, he wanted things done a certain way. My job was to carry on the duties the way Dick wanted me to carry them on, scheduling the way Dick wanted it done. I had a particular bartender one time actually quit here and have a meeting with Dick to go and complain to Dick about me and that I would never give him a chance to have a better bartending shift. And Dick told him outright, that wasn't Bill. Bill fought for you and wanted you on to change you and put you on another shift. I'm the one that told him, no, I didn't want you there. He made me feel like a partner here. I mean, it never made me feel like I was working for him. I was always working with him to do something. I learned a lot from Dick and Don Bruce, actually, for the first couple of years after we became. Don was at the Eagle often, helping with advice, how to deal with certain employees, staff, ideas about scheduling. Don was a big help even afterwards. And anytime Dick needed a hand with something, Don could help him out. Don would even come up here from Florida and make a trip up here.
I heard that, I think that was the time maybe when Don was retiring, was at the time that the new Eagle was located on the New York Avenue at that time when he retired. And that they were going to go to Florida.
Well, I don't know if he had cancer at that time or not, but then eventually he developed mouth cancer.
In 1992, during Eagle anniversary, also happened to be my birthday weekend. That's the Saturday of that 1992 Mr. Eagle contest. Dick McHugh had a little thing set up where 4 of the former Mr. DC Eagles grabbed me on stage and spread me out so Dick could give me my birthday wax on stage in front of everybody. He didn't complete all 32 of them, but you could tell some of the guys in the crowd enjoyed seeing me get my birthday wax. So the big part of that night also was that weekend is when he made me a partner in the bar. When Ted first came in the bar, the first time I saw Ted, it was a weekend night, and I was sitting at the bar, and I saw this handsome young man walk in with a chain chest harness. And I said, "Ooh, cool, hot man, hot young man." He was very young then. And walked over to the bartender. I was waiting for him to get a cocktail. And I was like, maybe I'll buy him a cocktail.
Bill was at the other end of the bar, and we made eye contact, and then it was like, oh, you want a job application, so you want to work here. He was a little disappointed. He was hoping we were going to hook up or something.
Next thing I know, the bartender was turned around and was pointing at me, and I was like, F***, he's looking for a job.
I filled out the application, came back later on that night, and had met Jim Raymond, and Jim and me were kind of playing around a little bit, and Dick came around and saw how we were interacting and actually did the interview without me even realizing I was being interviewed. But I wound up working here.
Ted hadn't walked in that night, or it wasn't the right timing. Maybe he wouldn't be here, but I'm so glad and happy he is. Dick was always the fighter, and didn't expect it to take him from us that fast. I felt, a couple of times that Dick had gotten sick and just shrugged it off and came back, I just thought that he would shrug off the non-Hodgkin's also, which at the time he wasn't able to. But he was a little older. He was 63 at the time when he died. So,
and it was really quick, the transition. I don't think Bill had enough time to come up to speed with everything.
If I'd have known Dick was going to leave that fast, I would have had to ask him for some other help if I was going to take it over, because the Eagle's bigger than any one person. You definitely need to have support and help to do this. And he could depend on me keeping the essence of the Leatherman as best I could, and I probably hit the bottle a little bit too much that year, Well, I know I did. I had a drink in my hand all the time after Dick died. I was like, oh well, I'm going to be living here. I might as well just live here, because I really was. I was spending more time here than I was at home. Yeah, it was. This was my life. The whole idea back, years ago is like, you didn't want to ruffle feathers, so you kind of kept your establishment subdued. It's a leather bar, it's all black, nondescript. You didn't want to really advertise where you are or what you were. But the rebel in me has always been there, and I'm not going to hide. I'm not going to lie about who I am. I'm not afraid to show who I am. So I know Dick always flew the American flag up at the top of the building, but my thing was I went ahead and put our flags up, our gay flag, our leather flag, and our bear flag, which is the three prominent gay flags. So I wanted people to know where we were and what we stood for and what we were. I was not afraid to do that. The leather community as a whole had stopped growing. And if anything, it was diminishing. And after Dick died, that was one of the roughest years for me. On top of all the things I had planned to do at the bar, new bathrooms, new equipment, just changing a few things around to modernize the place up, new cash registers, tried to promote the staff in a good way. For years, I wanted a computer. Dick would not let me get a computer for the bar. And that is like the number, if I didn't do that first, I did it number two. It was the second thing I did. I went and we got a computer and got a website. That was the first website. So we got a website put together, www.dceagle.com. And it was expensive back then to do that stuff. So, but I was, like I said, I invested about $70,000 into the bar, from putting new bathrooms in, equipment, coolers, amplifiers. When the internet first started, we couldn't understand why the business had dropped off so much, and we just didn't realize it was the internet that was doing this. And it wasn't doing anything. If people were meeting online and not having to go out to the bar. It's cheaper. You didn't have to worry about parking. It's downtown Washington, D.C. They think it's Times Square, the convention center right here on the corner. We went through a hard time when they were building that, because for 2 years, that street out in front of the bar was closed off to traffic. And people couldn't go up and down the street for almost 2 years because of the convention center. They had equipment and trucks parked out in front and on New York Avenue. That was probably 2003 time period when they were building the convention center, and that took a few years. It took at least 3 years, and for almost 2 years of that, guys had to climb over construction equipment to get here, which actually for some of them was probably fun. Just getting down here during the week knocked our business off 40%, and I was like, wow, that's when I had to refinance the house and try to do some fancy financial footwork here.
I remember when New York Avenue was shut down to build the convention center, and that was a tough time for any business that tried to stay open down here. But the Eagle persevered. Bill stuck it out.
We've had the traditional cement down the drains sabotage here. That cost us that was 2004. Cost us $30,000 with a emergency tear up the sidewalk. But it was just a fleeting moment that I might have thought. I really never really thought about closing it. In 2009, my brother Michael lent me $20,000 just to keep the bar open. I mean, I came into a bind. The property tax more than doubled on this building. I mean, you're talking going from $12,000 to $22,000 just for a 6-month period. stuff like that hit you. And then the power grid. And I had a lot of electrical work done in the building, and that was a lot of money also. Plus, then I got an electric bill one time for $10,000, and I thought it had to be a mistake. And I was like, Mike, you're not going to believe this. And again, he came to my rescue and to the bar's rescue, because that kind of expense showing up all of a sudden caught me totally by surprise. I had just fixed the ice machine, put $3,000 in an ice machine, paid other bills. You know, it cost $12,000 to $14,000 a week just to keep the doors open. So my brother, God bless him, he came to my aid, and to the bar. And I want everybody to know my straight brother helped keep the DC Eagle going, because otherwise I probably would have had to close in the next 6 months. Up until recently, when I started with my illness, my latest physical handicap, did I start thinking that, well, you know, I think maybe my time's come here. I decided to have my hip operated on because my hip was just getting worse. My leg was just getting worse and worse, and that was the other thing. My brother knew I was in pain from my hip. I had necrosis of the hip, where the bone marrow died. So that's what, I mean, he would have helped me out anyway. But I couldn't handle the pain anymore, and I wasn't going to live my life taking pain pills. So I went and had the operation, replaced my hip, and after that, it was about probably August of 2009. I started filling Ted in on the financial situation. For December of 2009, they diagnosed me with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, Burkitt's like, and same cancer that killed Dick. So you know where my head went right away, and my prognosis, I just wasn't feeling very good no matter what they told me about it. And I guess they came a long way in 10 years, because the treatment was horrendous. It was for 4 months of chemo. But I got through that, and I was surprised. I was really thinking that was going to be it for me, and I was like, oh, there's no chance to get all this transferred over in time. I really thought we were going to have to just close. And then, after I finished my chemo, and I went to visit my family just for a few days to start my recuperation, Ted diagnosed with a form of cancer, and he had to go through radiation treatment. And so I was like, oh no, this can't be. So I know I have to keep the bar open a few more months longer, because I got to make sure Ted gets through his chemo, and we got our health insurance intact, shit like that. Excuse me. And so luckily, they caught his cancer early also. Ted showed the interest in wanting to continue the Eagle also. And interest. And we were, luckily we had Peter Lloyd at our side, who was able to help front some money, because I knew what the next year's tax bill was going to be. The next year's tax bill, property tax bill, was going to be $36,000 or $38,000. And it's like, we just can't afford to stay here anymore. I can't afford to keep it open. We'd hit the real estate bubble too. Remember, it would burst. There was no financing. I went to the bank. I went looking around for financing for 2 years, I had a great credit rating, but they just were not lending money to businesses at all. And so I was really at my wit's end, and I was going to have to close.
I couldn't let that happen to the DC Eagle, so I wanted to help in any way I could. And I told Ted a couple of years ago, I leaned into the bar and I said, if you want, when you move, which the bar has to move soon, when you move, if you want to buy the building, I'm in 120%. If you want to pay someone else's mortgage, you're on your own.
First time talking to Peter, and he was always a member of the leather community. He's very vivacious. He was always involved with Brother Help Thyself and CAB, which is Capital and Baltimore area, leather clubs. And a lot of energy. I never known anybody who would volunteer for as many events to help support an event.
This is a new venture for me, but I don't want to be 70 years old and look back and think, gee, I really should have.
So the rent's going through the roof and it's time to relocate. The city's grown and it's time for us to grow and move and morph into a new scene.
I'd like to change, but I'm not sure how those might be incorporated in, because I'd like the Eagle to stay the DC Eagle. I just think it needs to perhaps expand to accommodate even more of our community.
It does take a lot, and you got to be here every day. And Ted and Peter are realizing that.
And we've been working on it for a while. So it's all the legal paperwork's done. The business has transferred hands.
I'm always apologizing to Ted for putting him in this position, because I know what he's going through, and he's going through it even more. And luckily, Peter and him make a really good team.
And I'm really glad that Ted and Peter and some other folks have stepped in to continue the traditions, but it's tough running a business in this town.
That was quite an achievement, just keeping the place open. And that's success for me, because I know how many people it just rubbed wrong, keeping the bar open. One of the bartenders asked me one time, well, what are you in here for? What are you in it for? I'm not in it to get rich. Why are you in it then? I said, because I know it really irks some people. And you know, being such a prominent, notorious leather bar, being downtown in the heart of Washington, D.C., I want to fly my flags proudly. I want to let people know. I want us to be visible. The more visible we are, that's what we have to do, you know, because homophobia is alive and well, and it's maybe not as prominent as it used to be, because definitely not politically correct any longer. There are people that feel that way to this day, and you know, they ought to spend time thinking about other things, because I see the bar even being just continuing on with Ted and Peter. Got to have a game plan, and they'll be roosting the Eagle in another place probably in the near future, next year or two, maybe 3 years, but I don't think it's going to be that long, because they're really anxious to get it relocated.
It's about contributing to society, be it the gay community, be it the straight community. We're part of the community. There's more of us out there than most people realize.
I love everything about my bar. I mean, I really do. I love everything about this bar.
Feels like home, and for me, that's what the leather community has been. It has felt like home. It's a place where I know that I'm accepted. I know that I can be myself. I know that I can just be me, and that's pretty hard and rare to find.
I can sleep good at night. I've done my share. I've done what I could to keep it up and running.
So for this bar to have continued for 40 some odd years is pretty incredible.
Staying open no matter what, no matter how hard it got, you know, and like I said, we almost closed 3 different times. It doesn't matter how much money you had. It's what you do with what money you do have. And it was all going back into the bar, all going back, you know, to staff and to the local, into the community. That's my achievement, is that I've kept the doors open, because, like I said earlier, there are people still who, like, don't know why the Eagle's still around. It's a crummy bar. It's like, obviously they don't come here, or they haven't been here in a while, because I'm very proud of what we do, and I'm very proud of the staff here. Very proud of Ted and Peter carrying on.
If I were to say one thing that all the viewers got to hear, it would be that this is a great place. It's a great tradition. It has served our community well and will probably continue to serve this community long into the future.
The community needed an eagle. They needed the eagle, and I felt that way anyway. I know I needed the eagle, and I wanted a place like the eagle to go to.
Hot stuff coming through!